My name is Malta and I once lived in a quiet, sun-warmed neighborhood on the eastern edge of Bata, the bustling coastal city of Equatorial Guinea. I was, by all appearances, a woman with everything a person could ask for: a well-respected husband, a beautiful home, and a place in the social fabric of the capital. My husband, Dr. Nando, worked tirelessly at the Ministry of Health, often traveling across provinces to inspect clinics, attend conferences, and lead health initiatives. I used to admire him deeply. I still do, in my own complicated way. But this story isn't about him. This is about Baltasar Ngonga, the man I should have resisted. He was a tall, sharply dressed man, with eyes that were too intelligent for his own good. Baltasar wasn't just anyone. He was the director of the National Financial Investigation Agency, a man whose name carried whispers in halls and shadows in boardrooms. People said he had the power to crush businesses or rescue them from ruin, depending on where his favor fell. But to me, he wasn't just the man behind closed government doors. He was the man who rented a house, a pale yellow bungalow tucked behind a rusted gate in an unassuming cul-de-sac near the old Spanish cathedral in Bata, just so we could meet. It began in a way that most affairs do, with a glance that lingered too long. We met at a charity gala, one of those ornate affairs thrown by the Ministry of Culture. Baltasar was there as a patron. I was there on my husband's arm, dressed in silk and smiling politely. But when our eyes met across the hall, something shifted. It wasn't lust, not immediately. It was curiosity, an unspoken question. Weeks later, I received an anonymous invitation to a private art exhibit in the heart of the city. I almost didn't go. But I did. And there he was, Baltasar, standing in front of a portrait of a faceless woman with gold earrings. We talked first about the painting, then about life, and then, too quickly, about us. We started meeting regularly. Baltasar said he didn't trust hotels. Too many eyes, he said. So he rented a house. A house with peeling paint and a garden that struggled to grow anything but weeds. But inside, it was warm, private, and ours. He filled it with incense and jazz records. There was always a bottle of red wine on the table, and curtains drawn tight, as if even the daylight shouldn't know what we were doing. There was danger in it, but not the kind that feels like falling. It was the slow, simmering danger that comes with knowing what you're doing is wrong and doing it anyway. He never promised me love. I never promised him forever. But in that house, with his hands around my waist and his voice in my ear, I forgot who I was supposed to be. Baltasar was different in private. He spoke of pressure, of files stacked like towers, of ministers whose pockets leaked secrets, and of the millions no one could account for. He would sometimes arrive agitated, holding a leather folder that he tossed onto the couch before pouring himself a drink. I never asked questions. That was the rule. I wasn't his interrogator, I was his escape. And I suppose he was mine. We existed in fragments: a Monday afternoon, a Thursday at dusk, sometimes a stolen hour on a Sunday morning when the church bells rang and my husband was in Ebabayan or Mongomo, inspecting a rural clinic. My lies were careful, woven like silk scarves around the truth. A meeting with a friend. A trip to the market. An upset stomach. Dr. Nando never questioned me. He was too tired. Too trusting. The house in Bata grew to feel more like home than the villa I shared with my husband. But I knew it couldn't last. These things never do. It began to unravel the day I saw a man watching the house from across the street. He stood near a mango tree, pretending to look at his phone, but I could feel the surveillance in the stillness of his body. Baltasar noticed too. He stopped coming for 3 weeks. No calls. No notes. Just silence. When he finally returned, his face was thinner, and there was a gash on his cheek. "They are watching everyone now," he said. He kissed me that night like it would be the last time, and maybe it was. The next morning, the yellow house was empty. No incense, no records, no wine. Just a single note on the kitchen counter. Malta. Stay safe. Ban this house from your memory. I never saw him again. Rumors followed. Whispers that Baltasar had been exiled. Others said he'd been promoted to a shadow role above the presidency. Some said he was dead. As for me, I returned to my carefully constructed life. I kept his secret. Rumors followed. Whispers that Baltasar had been exiled. Others said he'd been promoted to a shadow role above the presidency. Some said he was dead. But none of them were true. Baltasar Ngonga wasn't dead. He was simply hidden by design, by necessity, by a mind too sharp to let the state chew him up the way it did so many others. He had disappeared like smoke intentionally, and with the precision of a man who had spent years watching power erode the lives of lesser men. Baltasar didn't fall. He vanished. And I returned to the rhythms of married life. Dr. Nando, my husband, was more absorbed than ever in his work with the Ministry of Health. The pandemic had left its scars across the country, and rural clinics were struggling. He traveled constantly, sometimes sleeping in bush clinics, holding town hall meetings in remote villages where malaria was more feared than politics. He was a good man. He still kissed my forehead at night. And I still lied to him. Months passed. Then a year. I convinced myself that whatever Baltasar and I had shared was buried in that yellow house in Bata. But that's the trick of certain loves, they don't die. They root themselves in the quiet places inside you, where time can't touch them. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I saw him again. I had just left the artisan market with a basket full of ilang-ilang oil and smoked fish. The rainy season was creeping in, and the streets were glistening under a pale grey sky. As I walked toward my car, I caught sight of a man sitting on a bench under a canopy tree, reading a folded newspaper in Spanish. The second I saw the way his fingers held the edge, careful, elegant, deliberate, I knew. Baltasar. He didn't look up until I was 3 paces from him. Malta, he said, like he was testing my name for the first time in years. I froze. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to weep. You're dead, I whispered. He smiled. A convenient lie. The moment was too fragile for anger. He folded the paper neatly, stood, and handed me a small key. If you want to understand, come. 1 hour. No more. I stared at the key. It was old, rusted, with a red thread tied to its ring. I didn't ask where it led. That night, I lied again. I told my husband I was going to visit my cousin in Ngolo. I took a different car, a borrowed one, and drove in silence, the key pressing against my palm. The address he had given me was not in the city, but outside Bata, tucked beyond the mangroves and palms, where the sea mists rolled over the hills and only oil workers and ghosts lived. There, hidden among thorny hibiscus trees, was a villa made of concrete and shadows, unfinished from the outside but meticulously curated within. He lived there now. Alone. Off the grid. No phone. No online footprint. No visitors. Inside, it smelled of old wood, black tea, and citrus. He had books, dozens, all annotated. Papers spread across the desk. But more than anything, there was peace. A peace I'd never known. I work privately now, he told me, pouring tea. For no one. I follow the money like I used to, but I don't answer to corrupt ministers anymore. I bury secrets. I uncover others. I erase names when it's needed. Sometimes I erase my own. Why did you leave me? I asked, voice trembling. He studied me for a long moment. Because you still had a life. I didn't want to drag you into mine. We sat in silence for a long time, listening to the soft moan of the wind through the shutters. When he finally reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. And so we began again. Not in the yellow house, no. That was gone, too exposed. Too sentimental. This time, our affair took on a different rhythm, slow, secret, buried under layers of careful planning. We met in strange places. In the back rooms of abandoned fishing depots. In rented apartments for single nights. In the hidden corners of dusty libraries. He never entered the city under his real name. I never carried my phone when we met. Baltasar had changed. He was more intense, quieter, but more raw. He had seen things, evidence of theft that made the treasury look like a game, secrets about foreign banks, even ties between the elite and syndicates abroad. But in those hours we stole together, he let all that fall away. He would sit behind me and braid my hair while reading a file aloud. Sometimes I would draw little pictures of us in the margins of his reports, and he'd pretend to be furious. We would cook fish and cassava and then wash dishes in the same tin basin, laughing about old diplomats and their affairs. He told me I was the only thing that ever pulled him out of the fog. We had no future. Not a real one. But we had our truth. And that was enough for a time. It wasn't always romantic. There were fights. Days when he would disappear again for weeks with no word. Times when I feared he had truly been killed. Once, I saw his name mentioned in a redacted article published on a South African blog. I called a friend who worked in cybersecurity just to make the link vanish. I deleted every message I'd ever sent him. Changed SIM cards. Burned a notebook. My husband, he knew something was wrong. He became distant, bitter. He began sleeping in the guest room more often. But he never confronted me. Maybe he didn't want the truth. Or maybe he already knew it. The final time I saw Baltasar before everything changed was under a blood-red sky. He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a memory card, encrypted. If anything happens to me, he said, don't give this to the police. Give it to the priest at St. Jude's. He knows who to contact. What's on it? I asked. He didn't answer. Just kissed me, longer than he ever had before, as if memorizing my breath. He left that night. It's been 11 months now. No word. I kept the memory card in a hollowed-out soap bar in my closet. I haven't opened it. I don't know if I ever will. I still walk the beach some nights, the same stretch where we once lay in the sand and dared the sea to take us. Sometimes, I pretend I'll see him again standing by the palms with a newspaper folded under one arm and that same unreadable smile. Maybe he's alive. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's become the kind of ghost he once hunted. As for me, I've learned to live with the silence. It holds more truth than any speech. I still lie to my husband. But not to myself. Not anymore. Because the truth is, even if the world never knew what we were, Baltasar Ingonga was never just a man. He was a moment that rewrote the script of my life. And I'll carry that moment, quietly, secretly, until the very end. The scandal that burned the country. It happened on a Tuesday morning in July, one of those heavy, breathless days in Bata when the air hangs like wet fabric and the city buzzes just beneath the surface of silence. The day began as many others had. I served my husband his tea, smiled the way a wife is supposed to, and checked the market list on my phone. But something fell off. My cousin Nati called me fast, her voice trembling. Malta, do not go on the internet. That was the only warning I had. By midday, my world was on fire. The leak broke on an obscure blog hosted out of Portugal, a site that covered nothing but whispers, financial crime, African politics, and the hidden lives of men like Baltasar Ingonga. But it didn't stay obscure for long. In hours, it spread across every group chat, every Telegram thread, and then viral. WhatsApp messages exploded across Equatorial Guinea like gunfire. The title was simple. The Agency of Desire secret files and sex videos of Baltasar Ngonga exposed. I will never forget that moment. My hands shaking. My mouth dry. Sitting alone in the living room as the video loaded, pixelated, shaky, but unmistakable. There he was. Baltasar. Naked. In bed. Surrounded. Not with one woman, but dozens. Hundreds. The footage was spread over time, compiled like a documentary of depravity. Some clips were from security cameras. Others were obviously filmed with his knowledge. Some, God help me, looked like they had been recorded in the Yellow House in Bata. There were timestamps. Names. Locations. 200 women. Ministers' wives. Journalists. Business leaders. Foreign diplomats. Even the daughter of a former vice president. And me. I appeared at minute 41 of part 2. It was brief, blurry, but recognizable. The curtain in the background. My face turned slightly, just enough for anyone who knew me even faintly to realize the truth. There was no denying it. My phone rang non-stop. Nati, my older sister, a friend from the ministry. Then silence. That's when I knew it had reached my husband. When Dr. Nando came home, he didn't yell. He didn't cry. He walked into the kitchen, poured himself palm liquor, and sat at the dining table staring at the wall. You, he said quietly, were with him. I didn't speak. There was no point. The whole country has seen it, Malta. My colleagues. The ministry, I have to resign. That broke something in me. I tried to explain, tried to tell him it had ended, that I hadn't known he was recording, that I was just one moment in a long, chaotic life. But he looked at me with a kind of hollowed-out sadness I didn't know a man could carry. He left that night. I haven't seen him since. The national fallout was biblical. The president's office went silent. The National Financial Investigation Agency issued a half-hearted denial. But the videos were too detailed, too damning. Parliament demanded an inquiry. Some of the women fled the country. Others held press conferences, crying on television about coercion and betrayal. I said nothing. There were online articles. Forums ranking us. Speculation about who Baltasar had loved most. My name appeared in bold on one Spanish-language blog. Malta en esposa de alto funcionario de salud la Amonte número 43. My mother wouldn't speak to me. My church asked me to take time for private reflection. I could no longer walk through the supermarket without hearing whispers or seeing phones discreetly angled toward me. But the worst part, I didn't know whether to hate him or still love him. You see, I had believed I was different. I had believed our love, our bond, our secret world meant something. I thought we were escaping together. That he had trusted me. But now I saw it clearly. I was part of an archive. A collection. A network of women caught in his wake. Whether it was for leverage, pleasure, or power, I didn't know anymore. Then, another blow. A message. Anonymous. Delivered in a black envelope under my door. It contained two things. A USB stick. A note that said he didn't leak the videos. He was trying to stop them. What was on the USB shattered everything again. Dozens of internal memos. Surveillance documents. Private correspondence from a foreign intelligence agency, one that had been tracking Baltasar for years. They wanted to discredit him. He had gotten too close. He had found something buried in offshore accounts tied to members of the first family. He had downloaded the evidence onto a hidden drive. And the only way to destroy him, unleash his private archive and let the world judge him before he could speak. But that archive had been stolen before he could wipe it. Baltasar had tried to contain it. But the leak came faster than he anticipated. Maybe he was dead now. Maybe the silence that followed the scandal wasn't strategy, it was final. But if he wasn't, then he was watching it all burn. From somewhere in the dark, I considered running. But something inside me had changed. So I stayed. I attended the disciplinary hearings at the ministry. I answered questions from the Women's Commission. I told the truth about the affair, about how I never consented to being filmed, and about the Yellow House in Bata. I stood in front of a room of 60 men and women, my voice shaking, and said I was wrong. But I wasn't the only one. Some people started to understand. Others never would. Nando sent divorce papers 6 weeks later. I signed them in silence. I moved to Luba on Bioko Island where no one knew me. I work at a community clinic now. I read. I walk the beach. I speak to no one about the past. Except now. Sometimes, late at night, I replay the final memory of Baltasar's voice. If anything happens to me, give it to the priest. I never did. The memory card is still with me. And part of me wonders if I give it up, if I reveal the full truth, will it vindicate him? Or destroy the last piece of him I still want to protect? As Malta, the woman who once lived in the shadows of a double life and a scandal that shook a nation. My life today is quieter. But never truly quiet. I live in a small house on the outskirts of Luba, surrounded by the sound of ocean wind and the chatter of birds at dawn. The waves are always nearby. It's the one constant. Every morning I sweep the porch, light a stick of eucalyptus incense, and try to remember that I still belong to the world, even if the world once tried to erase me. I work in a rural health clinic helping women give birth, patching up children with malaria fevers, cleaning wounds with salt water and prayers. I keep my head low. I speak softly. No one here calls me by my real name, they simply call me Nana, which means nothing and everything at once. The women here respect me, though they don't know why. They say I'm calm in crisis. They say I look like someone who's already died once and come back. They are not wrong. I don't speak of Baltasar anymore. His name is like an old wound I've learned not to scratch. But sometimes when the power goes out and the stars open like wounds in the sky, I still wonder where he is. If he ever watches the ocean like we used to. If he remembers my perfume. If he regrets. Some days, I still get messages, quiet ones, anonymous ones. From women. From survivors. From others who were caught in the scandal and are still trying to understand who they were before it broke them. I always reply. Carefully. Kindly. Truthfully. My ex-husband, Nando, has remarried. I hear he lives in Spain now. He never spoke to me again. I understand. But I'm not bitter. I lost everything. My reputation. My marriage. My name. But I found something else. My own silence. And in that silence, I discovered that even a woman buried by scandal can grow something new. I garden now. I laugh more than I used to. I don't chase answers. I let the ghosts stay ghosts. My life today is not what I imagined. But it is mine. And for that, I'm grateful.